Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Secrets in the shallows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret got beneath the undertone. Honor stories hidden in the glass. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. And today we're going to talk about political math. I've been in politics since 2001. So, been on the school board for 21 years, 12 years in the State House, 12 years on the City Council. So that's kind of like the equivalent of 45 years. And one thing about politicians do not have to tell the truth. They're protected by law. Hey, they can lie, they can give you false information, they can give you information that will lead you come to a false conclusion. They can basically, politicians can say anything that you want them to believe. So it doesn't care if you're Democrats, it doesn't care if you are Republicans. You'll get politicians to say whatever they think you want to hear. It doesn't have to be truthful. Excuse me. Because people like to say, yeah, my politician is not really a great person, not somebody I'd want to have as a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. But you know what? He's better than the other side's politician. So what we do is we have two groups of people arguing over who's the best or who's the worst. You know, it's kind of like the football league, NFL, 32 teams. Instead of worrying about going to the Super Bowl or whatever, you got a team that's ranked 31 and 30, 31, 32. They're arguing over, you know what? They're worse than us. And guess what happens? When you argue over who's the worst, good people do not want to get involved. Why would I want to play on a team that sucks? And everybody knows it sucks. And the only thing that you will have to look forward was we went worse than them. Well, that's what politics are. And we're going to talk about some political math. And because it seems like when people get to be politicians and they get on the finance committee or commerce committee, excuse me, it seems like they've lost their ability of basic math that they learned in 4th and 5th grade or even younger. You know, 3 plus 2 equals 5. But I want to spend 10. So somehow they're able to say, well, you know what? That 5, maybe it should be a 6. That 3, maybe that should be a 4. So yeah, now I can spend 10 because I have a 6 and a 4. Okay? As long as they get the public to believe it's a 6 and a 4, the public will buy off on it. The majority of the public will buy off on it. And so after that, it's like, not my problem. Well, the big thing that's been going on is tariffs and tariffs and tariffs. 135% tariff, 250% tariff, a 10% tariff, a 25% tariffs, a 90% tariffs, a tariff on an island where only penguins live. Tariffs all over the place. Okay. President Trump, it's on the news and everything. President Trump went on Fox News and everything. I said, well, you know what? I think we will be able to raise so much tariffs that we'll be able to get rid of the income tax. People go, and there's people going, wow, that is really good. That is really good. We don't have to pay taxes. Mitt Romney got in trouble when he said 50% of the people in the United States don't pay any income tax because their income is so low. Oh, so we have no income tax. So that bottom 50%, what do they get? Oops. Well, you got this group way at the top that people say, well, they pay like 40, 35, 40% of the income tax. So if we have no income tax, then the really wealthy, the 1%ers, the 0.1%ers, the top 5, top 10, wow, they won't have to pay any taxes. So it's kind of like if a couple, they make $200,000 between them. And if they just use the standard deduction and everything, so that's about $26,000, $28,000 in taxes they have to pay. So if we have the tariffs pay that, that means you're making $200,000 a couple, you just got $28,000 more to spend or invest. Where a couple, married couple, 2 kids, working in McDonald's, Walmart, or a job that pays them $20 an hour, which means 40,000, so they would get $80,000 a year. By the time they take the kids and all those other expenses, that means they get nothing. I guess people weren't thinking about that, or the only people that were really making the comments about that was really wealthy people. How was the people, would it affect New Hampshire or whatever? And I just looked it up. And no, right before we go to New Hampshire, the federal government collects $1.14 trillion last year in income tax. $1.14 trillion. So to wipe out the need for anybody to pay income tax, the United States government would have to collect an additional $1.14 trillion on income tax. I mean, on tariffs. So that would make things go up. Okay? How would it affect New Hampshire, or would it affect New Hampshire? Do you realize that the state of New Hampshire imports $10.2 billion last year? Just in the month of January, they imported $810 million and we exported $547 million. Last year, New Hampshire exported $7.1 billion worth of stuff. Well, if other countries decided not to buy New Hampshire products, I think that means some people are going to lose their jobs. Okay, 10.2. If the prices of imports can't are going too high, and then it's too expensive for companies in New Hampshire to import products, which parts and stuff which they may put together to make other products. Again, some people will lose their job. Okay? So, but these companies that export from New Hampshire and these companies that import from New Hampshire, they have to pay the business profit tax. So if they're not making as much money, the business profit tax collected goes down. Okay? Well, if I don't have my job, maybe I'm not going to go out and buy some beer or buy some wine or whiskey to celebrate. Oops, that goes down. Okay? Yeah, I got no money to waste on lottery tickets. Oops, that goes down. It's a rippling effect, a cause and effect. Every action causes a reaction. So all of a sudden, the state of New Hampshire gets even less money than it gets right now. They're fighting right now to do a budget without cutting a lot of stuff. And so on the next budget cycle, they have even less money, or they projected all this money to come in after June, starting July 1st, and then the money doesn't come in, and the state has to use its rainy day fund. If it uses up its rainy day fund, it's going to have to lay off people. It's going to have to cut services. So that's the cause and effect. And if they cut the services, they lay off people and everything, they can't provide money to the municipalities. And so the local government is going to have to cut services, raise taxes, or do both. And that is the deep view. That is not a 5-10 second clip on Fox News or CBS or NBC. That's reality, and it's going to affect a lot of people. And so the rest of the show, we're going to talk tariffs. If you get bored with things like that, yeah, I advise you to find something else to entertain yourself. But if you want to know about tariffs, that's what we're going to cover for about the next 45 minutes. During his presidential campaign, President Trump pledged to impose universal tariffs of 10 to 60% on all U.S. imports, a whopping $4.2 trillion in goods and services purchased from abroad, 2024. $4.2 trillion. Our GDP, our gross domestic national product, say you round it off to $30 trillion. So that'd be about 12, 13% of our gross domestic product we import, but we also export. So when we're exporting, we're creating a lot of jobs. So it goes back both ways. The International Economic Emergency Power Act gives the president broad authority to do so. In early February, the Trump administration seemed to be making good on threats to enact extremely high and broad-based tariffs. They announced 25% on the goods from Mexico, 25% on Canada. Well, the mayor up in Ontario says, hey, you know what? You want to be like that? We're just going to shut off our electricity. And the president goes, well, you know what? Maybe that's not a good idea. As well as tariffs of 10% on all goods from China, kept pushing off the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. These three countries, Mexico, Canada, and China, of all the stuff that's imported into the country, 40% of all things that we import are from China and Mexico and Canada. Those three countries comprise 40% of all our imports. What is a tariff? That word is thrown around. A tariff is a tax levied on imports to the United States. By raising the cost of foreign produced goods or services related to U.S. produced ones, a tariff redistributes some of the benefit of trading from U.S. consumers and foreign products to U.S. producers of the import competing tariffs, allowing domestic businesses to also raise prices. In this way, a tariff acts as a tax on consumption as well as allowing importing competing businesses to raise prices without losing market share to foreign producers. Okay. So the tariff is a tax on a foreign thing. So if something is $10, so we raise the tariff. So I buy an item from China. It's $10. That same item, if I want to buy it from the United States, is $13. So now say we put 145% tariff on that product from China. So now that product from China is $24.50. So my $13 product, I should be able to produce a lot of that $13 product, get market share, and do pretty good. But wait a minute. The product from China is $24.50. And my product, I'm making a profit at $13. You know what? I'm going to raise my price up to $21. I'm going to charge $8 more for that product. Even though it won't cost me a penny more, that'll be 8 times. Every time I sell that product, I put $8 more in my bank account. Because at $22 or $21, the product from China can't compete. Unless I'm making $500 a week. Now the thing's expensive for China, and now I'm making $750 a week. So that means I got my competition out. I can make more product, so I can hire more people, make more product, but I can sell the product for $8 more. But in the United States, the demand is for $1,000. So I'm now producing $750 at $21. So the people who need those 250 more, they got a choice. They can go without, lose business, or they'll pay the $24.50 from that same item for China. And if I need it for a building or I need it for this, that means my end product that I sell to the customer will just be higher. Okay? So for those 250 extra ones at $24.50, that $24.50, that $14.50 counts as income to the federal government. Tariffs are income to the federal government. Because for a long time, when the federal government was small and the federal government wasn't taking care of a lot of people, when the federal government wasn't in 20-year wars of getting nothing, tariffs, tobacco, liquor, there was enough money coming in to pay for that. So you didn't need money. You didn't really need an income tax, except like places, sometimes when you have a big war, like the Civil War, where you need money. So they count that as income. But wait a minute. I sell $500 a week at $8 more. So that's $40,000 extra I get. Then I get the 250 more. So that's another 20,000. So I'm getting 60,000 of the 60,000 bucks extra a week that I'm producing. Where do you think that $60,000 comes from? If people are paying $60,000 more, they have to be taking the money from someplace else, so they are not buying someplace else. It's like it is. A tariff is a tax levied on imports. Can tariffs be effectively used to target smart policy-making goals? Here's the word here: smart policy goals. Goals. And you know what? Politicians are well known for not making smart decisions. They can be off-the-cuff decisions to help me get reelected. But long range, nope, we do not have a very good track record. For example, providing effective protection for domestic production. Okay, China's government was supporting steel making. So China's steel was so much cheaper than U.S. steel that basically it was putting the United States steel making business out of business. And steel making is a strategic commodity that we need for national defense and things like that. And we did not want to lose it because then we'd have to defend on a foreign power. So we put a 25% tariff. If we go in and say China, it's $10 to make a ton of steel, but the Chinese government is subsidizing it by $4, we in turn can put a tariff of 40% on to make up what the Chinese government is subsidizing the steel industry. Another way is shielding U.S. workers. Okay? Say in Vietnam, Cambodia, after the Vietnam War, they got together, they used and abused and killed an awful lot of people. They basically worked a lot of people to death. So if you're working people to death 12, 13, 14 hours a day, paying maybe $1.50 or maybe $2, there's no way the American worker could compete with that or would want to be treated like that. So we go and say, hey, you know what? We're going to put a 300% tariff on your country until you start treating your people right and paying them a halfway decent wage. Tariffs are most effective when they are focused on the well-defined and narrowly tailored goals. They work as a part of a larger strategy. What is the well-defined goal? I heard is that the president wants to do away with our trade imbalance. Can you do that with a tariff? No, your trade imbalance. Well, there's a way. No trade. No trade out, no trade in. Do you think another country is going to go and say, you're putting this big tariff on our country, but we're not going to do anything for your country? Maybe if I'm a dictatorship and I want to keep the people happy, maybe increase and pay them $5 a day, have a halfway different place to live. And I don't make as much money by exploiting my people, but I keep them under control. If you read history, dictators are pretty good at that. If they want to stay in power, that's what you do. You got to keep people comfortable. You don't have to keep them happy, but you got to keep them comfortable so they're afraid to do anything. The most direct benefit of a tariff is protection for domestic sectors in the U.S. economy that warrant strategic support. For example, some sectors are harmed when our trading partners take action to support their own domestic exporters and undercut labor and clear air and water standards, or are critical for the economic and national security. So we can go and say, hey, China's building all these coal power plants. They're burning all this stuff. They're putting more gas and pollutants in air. One of the biggest complaints is Europe was trying to go green. United States and Canada was trying to go green. But India and China was just worrying about producing things for export. Well, if you're from West Virginia, Kentucky, the coal area, Wyoming, you don't care that China is building these these coal-fired plants and just pumping out all this stuff. Don't care at all because you're getting money. Every train that may be a mile long coming out of the Wyoming coal pits goes from black to gold. And plus, you know what? That's China. Let them poison their own people. It ain't me. It had no effect on me. Also, put a tariff. You got new industries in the United States. They're growing. And they don't get as much government support in the United States as they do overseas. And so we want to protect those industries so the industries can grow and be able to compete on their own. For example, AI, cloud, things like that. In the United States, you got to cut it on your own and cutthroat market and see who's going to prevail. China might go and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put all this together, get everybody together, and come up with a plan so we can have a better and faster outcome. Tariffs can also be used to shield United States workers from low-road practices like labor abuse among trading partners. For example, if tariffs were higher for countries that routinely fail to protect workers' fundamental rights, or if tariffs were lower when a country made genuine commitments to protect those rights, the benefit of pursuing international competitiveness through wage suppression would be reduced. It's like I just said earlier, you know what? I'm Vietnam, I'm going to pay you $3 to make Nike shoes. Hey, make Nike shoes all day. Okay. And you go, well, you know what? That is a pretty low price. You know what? We're going to put a 40% tariff on to make up what really we think the wages should have been. But let's look at it. If Nike made shoes in Japan, then went to South Korea because South Korea was cheaper, then went to China because China was cheaper than South Korea, and then went to Vietnam because Vietnam is China. How did that benefit the American people? Think about it. If I have someone in Vietnam making an Air Jordan shoe, the materials are not that expensive, and the person, even if the person got $3 an hour, and even when you pay for shipping, why should that shoe cost $200, $250? Think about it. Who's gaining that money? The stock owners? Phil Knight, who became a multi-billionaire because he was selling his shoes way over production costs. He was able to create a market to do that. No different than the iPhone, no different than the iPads. And now China's getting up there. It's like, oh, you know what? These Chinese people are costing too much. Maybe we ship them to India. You know, go to Walmart, go to Sierra, go to TJ Maxx, go to a lot of these places with clothes. And look how many say made in Vietnam, made in Cambodia, made in Bangladesh. Look at the ones that Walt Disney has made. When I was going to school and we had an example on that, the people that were making a Disney shirt, they could work all day and not have enough money to buy a Disney shirt that they made. So we as American people are getting screwed big time because in a lot of times we're paying 2-3 times more than we should be paying because we have a lot of people that get really greedy and have no problem gouging us, no problem paying influencers or Kardashians or these other people to tell us what to wear, tell us what perfume to put on. Similarly, tariffs can also be used in complementing high road competition and environmental standards. For example, by embedding the cost of greenhouse emissions from manufacturing and transport in low standard countries, this could incentivize clean air while making sure American workers in trade-exposed, energy-intensive industry do not bear the extra burden of adjusting to new climate policies. Here's the thing. Can high and broad-based tariffs fix the U.S. trade deficit or rebuild manufacturing employment? No. In brief, no. Mostly because high and broad-based tariffs will also reduce exports with imports, and this will leave the balance of trade mostly unchanged. Exports fall when tariffs are introduced for a number of reasons. The first is that many U.S. exports use inputs more expensive with tariffs will boost the price of these U.S. exports and make them less competitive in the global market. Second, trading partners are highly likely to retaliate with you and retaliate with you with tariffs of their own, making exports more expensive in international markets. When we see on Made in America goods from Boeing aircraft to Kentucky bourbon, and finally tariffs will put upward pressure on the value of the U.S. dollar in global markets. Okay? Part of this game, the people in Kentucky are going wild, mad, because Canada has decided not to buy Kentucky whiskey, not Kentucky bourbon. They're buying other places. Canada's going, well, you know what? Hey, this product's in Canada I can buy. There's a disposable diaper making company in Canada. There's only one in Canada. But I was reading, you know what? A lot of the American diaper companies are complaining now because this one company is working around the clock producing diapers because Canadian mothers do not want to buy U.S. diapers. And so, if Canadians are not buying American whiskey, they're not buying American diapers, and they're not coming into the United States for trips, going to their winter homes down south, going vacation. They're saying about 30% of them are already canceled already. I think that makes the trade imbalance between the United States and Canada worse, because it doesn't look like America is sending extra stuff to Canada because the Canadians don't want to buy it. And The only thing the United States is getting is an extra 10 and 25% on the tariffs. And like it said, hey, I may go to China, buy or have the Chinese people make these pots, or Singapore or Malaysia or Vietnam or Cambodia, and bring them into the United States and make the finished product here so I can sell overseas. Well, if we get a tariff on those, say it's a 10% tariff, that means when that product comes into the United States at a bare minimum, it's 10% higher. So the people overseas going, well, you know what? Maybe I don't want to buy that product. Or Europe, the EU is saying, you know what? What do we buy from America that we absolutely need? What do we buy from America just because we have money to buy? Okay? Talk about Boeing. China just said, hey, no parts that we make for Boeing aircraft are leaving China. When Donald Trump did this last time, and there was a hold on this, the Chinese government stopped buying Boeing aircraft and now have their own industry. Now, but in the meantime, they went in and they were making products for Boeing aircraft. If you go see, there's pictures go online of all fuselages just waiting there that Boeing was waiting for. Because Boeing says, I don't want to pay someone $65, $70 an hour to work on these aircraft. When someone in China, it can be just as good, if even not better, might do it for $15 an hour. Well, Boeing doesn't have the capacity anymore to build those aircrafts here. They can do some. They can do the final touches here. But they made corporate decisions to maximize their profits. We sent businesses overseas because we could make more money. Where in the United States is someone going to work and bust their hump to make bras that you can get for $3 at Walmart? Not no more. They used to do that in the Lowell Mills and stuff. Then they said, hey, wait a minute. We can move all our sweatshops down to North Carolina, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia. Then they said, hey, we can even get it cheaper if we move it overseas. The businesses, when they talk about, oh, we're international, these companies, American companies, stopped worrying about America. All they were doing was worrying about getting maximum profit. A lot of companies around the country, around the world, take pride in being a Japanese company, being a Chinese or a German or Italian company. Our pride is, how big is my net worth? And it's coming to catch us. Yeah. Prior to 2018, China accounted for 25% of Boeing's sales. But after the tariff, China stopped ordering Boeing aircraft and created an opening for China's homegrown, a direct competitor to Boeing 737 plane. Not only will U.S. exporters lose market abroad, but the lost export will increase the supply of their own goods to the U.S. market, putting downward pressure on the price of the goods they sell domestic, reducing core price. Okay? I make 1,000 widgets. I sell 500 to China, and I sell 500 to the American people. Hey, not bad. Then China and Europe said, nah, we're not buying any of your widgets. Or let's make it easier. We're only buying 250 of your widgets between us. Okay? So that leaves you with 250 widgets. So now that means I got 750 widgets to sell in the United States this year. 50% more than I had last year. So that means I can't sell those widgets at last year's prices. I have to lower the cost. That means I got to lay off some people. My profits are going to go down. My stock price is going to go down. And so countries use the dollars they earn from importing to the United States to purchase exports from the United States. If tariffs reduce dollars countries earn from importing to the United States, this will either lead them to reduce what they purchase as U.S. exports, or they will need to purchase dollars on the international capital market in order to maintain their level of U.S. export purchases. This increased demand for dollars in these capital markets will push up demand for dollars, and the exchange rate will increase. The greater demand for U.S. dollars, the more the dollar's worth. So, that could cause problems. Again, this is not speculative. It is exactly what happened in 2018 in response to Trump's first-term tariffs on Chinese technological goods and broad steel and aluminum imports. When China depreciated its currency by roughly 10% against the dollar against an international basket of currency, the dollar rose by 7.5%. Already since the 2024 election, the value of Chinese currency has fallen 1.1% against the dollar. As a result of these influences, the U.S. trade deficit, how much we export minus how much we import, saw no improvement during the first Trump administration when tariffs were increased. Who pays for the tariffs? In brief, American households will bear most of the burden of high tariffs. This will mostly come from higher prices for imported goods and critically higher prices for domestic goods that compete with imports. So it's kind of like this. A tariff is a tax. So the president wants to use the tax from the tariffs, hoping to raise $1.1 trillion from tariffs, so you don't have to pay income tax, but you got to make up the $1.1 trillion by higher prices for foreign goods and higher prices for U.S. made goods because they can. In detail, tariffs are taxed on imported foreign goods and services. The legal incidence of these tariffs fall on the U.S. companies during the importing. If a company imports $100 worth of goods and the tariffs are $20, the company must pay a tax of $20 to the federal government. However, one of the useful insights of economics is that the legal incident, a tax and economic incidents are different. Taxes set off a cascade of adjustments that can spread or concentrate the ultimate economic burden. It is important to note that if tariffs do not raise the prices in U.S. markets, they will not shift consumer preferences to domestic goods from foreign goods, thereby failing to provide any useful protection to domestic industries. Because the tariffs on a competing foreign goods does not change the U.S. company's production costs, in the short run, the higher price U.S. consumers pay for import goods go directly into the higher profit for the company. In the long run, and with complementary supporting policies, some of those profits might be redirected to investment in wages as import competing sectors look to expand. What more, for goods that the United States does not or cannot produce domestically at adequate levels to meet demand, tariff rises prices for U.S. consumers and businesses without giving a boost to domestic industry. Here's an example. How much coffee is produced in the United States? Avocados, I haven't seen, they got a few in California. Haven't seen any banana plantations in the United States. Or rare earth metals that China said, hey, we're not shipping anymore to the United States. Tariffs on imports that do not compete with made in America goods simply raise prices for U.S. consumers without spurring domestic production. They represent a pure cost to American consumers with no counterbalance benefit. Tariffs are essentially a tax on consumers and are therefore more regressive than the current federal revenue sources. This means with tariffs, people with lower income will pay a larger share of their earnings in taxes than higher income people. For significant amounts of revenue we need to raise in the coming years, we should build on the existing progressive revenue sources we have, income and estate tax, and institute protection. So, hey, like I said, Trump is going saying, oh yeah, you poor slobs on the bottom 50, who cares about you? I don't care about you. I'm a billionaire. My friends that hang around are billionaires. Hey, I got Elon Musk, who's worth 50 times more than I am, maybe even more. Do they care about us only if we buy their products or put them in position of power, maximizing their power and maximizing their profits? So, you have Mr. Trump's tariffs, which a lot of people support. He goes, well, Mr. Cook, I know you're Apple and you really support me and you were there on my inauguration. We're going to exempt Apple from that. We're going to exempt computers from that. You know, the farmers, oh yeah, how did that tariff work in 2018? Oh yeah, The farmers lost so much money that the federal government had to pay $61 billion to make up what they lost. Hey, so China goes, you know what? We're going to grow more pigs ourselves. We're not going to count on the United States. That's what happens. How many times did your mother or your father or someone says, no, you can't have that. I'm not going to let you have it. And you go, good. I will find a way to take care of myself. I will do it myself. And that's what's going to happen with the tariffs. Like it says, these people have to sell goods to the United States so they can turn around and buy things from the United States. I guess people don't think about that. But for the average person in the United States, for the majority of the people in the United States, it comes down to consumption. With these tariffs, that 95-inch TV for $800 at Walmart, you would have never gotten there. So the big people that are going to suffer are the ones that go to Walmart because those prices are going up. The dollar store has already said it's going up. Temu already is cutting down advertising and said the price is going up. Amazon says their price is going up. President Trump, who said the tariffs are bringing in $2 billion a day, well, the Congressional Budget Office said since the president has been president of the United States, he's done 15 actions to increase tariffs and has brought in a whopping $500 million. $500 million is a far reach from $2 billion a day. So the key is we gotta stop buying.